They scorned her for being penniless, until the wealthy baron declared, "My ranch needs a woman like you." The town of Redstone was small, dusty, and unkind to the weak. Its streets were lined with weather-beaten wooden buildings, its people hardened by years of drought, failed crops, and rough frontier living. In a place where reputation meant survival, those without money or a family name were left to carry the burden of whispers, mockery, and shame. And no one knew that sting more than Eliza Mae Carter. She was only 21, but life had already carved fine lines of exhaustion around her eyes. Her dresses were threadbare, patched too many times to count, and her boots had holes at the soles that let in dust with every step. Her father had died in a mine accident 3 winters ago, and her mother had passed not long after, grief and sickness stealing what little strength she had left. That left Eliza with nothing: no family, no land, no dowry, and no protection in a town where women were measured by what they could bring to a man's household. Yet despite her struggles, there was a quiet dignity about her. Her dark hair was always tied neatly, her hands scrubbed clean even after hours of scrubbing laundry for town families who paid her only pennies. She walked upright even when whispers followed her. And whispers always did. "She's still unmarried? No wonder. Who'd take a penniless girl? Did you see her dress? Looks like it came out of a rag bin. She ought to leave town. Can't be good for business, letting that kind of poverty hang around the streets." Eliza heard them all, though she never let her face show the ache inside. That morning, the town square was busier than usual. The weekly market was in full swing, farmers unloading sacks of potatoes, ranch hands delivering cuts of beef, women trading eggs and milk for flour or sugar. Eliza was there, too, clutching a small basket with 2 loaves of bread she had baked at dawn. The flour had been bought on credit, and she prayed she could sell the loaves before the grocer demanded payment. She set them carefully on a wooden crate in the corner of the market. Her stomach clenched as she watched townsfolk walk past, their eyes sliding over her offering as though it carried disease. She forced herself to smile anyway, hoping for kindness. But kindness was rare in Redstone. 2 women, dressed in neatly pressed calico with ribbons in their hair, stopped not far from her stall. They didn't lower their voices. "Look at her," one sneered. "Selling scraps of bread like some beggar. Does she think anyone wants food baked in that shack of hers?" The other woman laughed. "Maybe she's hoping some man will take pity on her. Can't imagine anyone with sense marrying a girl with no land, no money, and no kin." Heat burned Eliza's cheeks, but she kept her eyes on her loaves. If she answered back, it would only fuel them. Silence was her only shield. But the shield cracked when a group of young ranch hands sauntered past, all spurs and swagger. One of them, a tall boy named Jed, who had once courted her before learning she had no dowry, grinned cruelly. "Careful, boys," he called out. "If you buy that bread, you might end up with a baker tagging along. Free wife with every loaf." The men laughed. The women smirked. And Eliza's heart clenched tighter than ever before. She swallowed hard, willing herself not to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. She was gathering her courage to pack up and leave when the murmurs in the crowd shifted. People began turning, their voices lowering to hushed excitement. "Look, Baron Hale is here. Lord save us, what's he doing at the market? Must be buying stock for the ranch." Eliza froze. Everyone in Redstone knew Baron Alexander Hale, though most had never spoken to him directly. He was the wealthiest landowner in 3 counties, his ranch stretching over rolling hills and fertile pastures that seemed endless. Some called him a baron half-jokingly, but the name stuck, for his wealth and influence were unmatched. He was a man in his mid-30s, tall and broad-shouldered, his presence commanding even without a word. His dark hair was touched with the faintest streak of silver at the temples, and his eyes, piercing gray, seemed to look right through a person. He had a reputation for fairness, but also for distance. He didn't waste time on small talk or town gossip. His focus was always on his land, his cattle, and the empire he had built with iron determination. So when he stepped into the market square that morning, silence rippled outward. The townsfolk straightened their backs, smoothed their aprons, adjusted their hats. They wanted his attention, his approval, maybe even his coin. Baron Hale moved with quiet purpose, inspecting goods, asking direct questions, buying flour here, leather there. but his steps slowed when he reached the corner where Eliza stood. She felt her breath hitch. She wasn't ready for his eyes to fall on her, yet suddenly they did. For a moment, the noise of the market faded. His gaze dropped to the 2 humble loaves of bread, then rose to her face. She tried to summon words, but her throat was dry. Behind him, Jed and his friends were snickering. "Careful, Baron," Jed called mockingly. "That bread comes with more baggage than you need." A ripple of laughter followed. Eliza wanted the earth to swallow her whole. She opened her mouth to apologize, to retreat, anything to escape the humiliation. But Baron Hale's voice cut through the air, firm and steady. "I'll take them both." The crowd went still. Eliza blinked, hardly believing she'd heard right. "'Es, sir." "The bread," he repeated. He reached into his coat and drew out a silver coin, more than 10 times what the loaves were worth. He set it down on the crate without hesitation. "They'll do well enough for my ranch." Gasps echoed around the square. Eliza's hands shook as she offered him the bread. It isn't worth that much, sir." His eyes held hers, unwavering. "I'll decide what it's worth." He took the loaves, then turned slightly, addressing the market at large. His voice carried easily, though he didn't raise it. "Seems to me this town has forgotten that hard work is worth respect, whether it comes with riches or not. A woman who rises before dawn to bake bread is worth more than a dozen idlers who do nothing but sneer." Silence fell heavier than a storm cloud. The Baron's words cut sharper than a whip, and those who had laughed at Eliza suddenly found their boots very interesting. Eliza's heart pounded. No one had ever spoken for her like that. And then came the words that would change everything. Baron Hale looked directly at her once more, his tone steady, deliberate. "My ranch needs a woman like you." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The townsfolk stared, mouths agape, as though they'd all misheard. But the Baron wasn't smiling. He wasn't jesting. He meant it. And in that moment, Eliza realized that her life, the one she had thought doomed to shadows and whispers, was about to shift into something she could never have imagined. The words hung in the air long after Baron Hale left the market square. "My ranch needs a woman like you." Eliza Mae Carter walked home in a daze, the silver coin heavy in her palm, her heart heavier still. She could feel eyes burning into her back as she left the market. The same people who had mocked her that morning now whispered in tones of disbelief. "Did you hear what he said to her? Of all people, the Baron chose her. It must be charity. No other reason." But deep inside, Eliza wasn't so sure. His voice had been steady, certain, not the kind used to soothe or patronize. He had spoken as a man who meant what he said. That night, in her small shack on the edge of town, she set the coin on the table and stared at it. It gleamed against the rough wood, brighter than anything she owned. She ran her fingers across its surface, as though half expecting it to vanish. "Why me?" she whispered into the silence. The next morning, the answer began to take shape. Baron Hale's ranch lay several miles outside of Redstone, stretching over valleys of tall grass and rolling hills. Cattle dotted the land like moving shadows, tended by skilled ranch hands who rode tirelessly beneath the wide frontier sky. The main house, built of strong timber and stone, stood tall at the center, its windows catching the morning light. It was there Eliza found herself, clutching her patched shawl nervously as she stood at the front steps. A rider had come for her at dawn, delivering a message in the Baron's clipped, efficient style. "The Baron requests your presence at the ranch." No explanation. No details. Just that. She nearly refused. Fear had knotted in her stomach. What business could such a powerful man have with her? But curiosity, and something deeper, something that whispered of hope, had urged her feet forward until here she was, staring up at the largest house she'd ever seen. The heavy oak door opened, and Baron Hale himself appeared. "Eliza Mae," he greeted, his tone calm but not unkind. "Come in." Her breath caught. No man of his standing had ever spoken her name so plainly, as though it mattered. She stepped inside, her worn shoes quiet against the polished wood floors. The house smelled of leather, cedar, and faintly of smoke from the large stone fireplace in the main room. Everything was orderly, purposeful, much like the man himself. He gestured for her to sit. She perched nervously on the edge of a sturdy chair, her hands clasped in her lap. "I'll not waste words," he began, taking the seat opposite her. "You heard what I said yesterday. My ranch needs a woman like you. Let me explain." Her pulse thundered in her ears. She nodded faintly, waiting. "This ranch is vast," he continued. "It takes more than men to keep it alive. A home requires care. Workers need meals, laundry, order. There are matters of hospitality, trade, and management that no foreman can tend to properly. I've searched for someone dependable, someone steady, someone who knows the weight of hard work. Yesterday, I saw that in you." Her lips parted in surprise. You mean to hire me?" His gray eyes held hers. "Yes." "To hire you. To give you a place here. But more than that." He paused, considering. "A ranch like this cannot run without a woman at its heart. And I believe you could be that woman." The words sent her reeling. "But, sir, I have nothing. No money, no land, no family." He cut her off gently but firmly. "You have character, and character cannot be bought." Tears stung her eyes before she could stop them. No one had ever spoken of her worth like that. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," he replied simply. Life on the ranch was nothing like the hollow existence she had endured in town. Within days, Eliza found herself immersed in work that was demanding but meaningful. She oversaw the kitchen, planned meals, tended to the garden, and organized supplies with efficiency born of years of making do with scraps. The ranch hands, wary at first, soon came to respect her quiet determination. They were fed better, their laundry was mended, and the house took on a warmth it had lacked before. But it wasn't only her hands that changed the ranch, it was her spirit. She greeted the workers with kindness, remembered their names, and listened when they spoke. Slowly, the great Hale ranch began to feel less like a machine and more like a home. And all the while, Baron Hale watched. He was not a man prone to many words, but Eliza noticed the small things. The way he lingered near the kitchen door as she hummed while kneading bread, the way his eyes softened when she bandaged a ranch hand's cut, the way he asked her opinion when trade matters arose. He treated her not as a servant, but as a partner. Yet whispers reached her even here. On her first trip back into Redstone, women eyed her with thinly veiled disdain. "So the Baron brought her in, did he? Must be charity. A man like him could have any woman in town. She won't last. Mark my words." Eliza lowered her gaze, the old shame tugging at her heart. But when she returned to the ranch, the Baron was waiting by the gate, his horse at his side. "You've heard them," he said, reading the sorrow on her face without her needing to speak. She nodded. "They'll never see me as more than a poor girl with nothing to offer." His jaw tightened. "Then let them look all they like. Their words change nothing." "But why?" The question burst from her before she could stop it. "Why do you care what happens to me?" For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, softly but with certainty, he answered, "Because I see the woman you are, not the one they mock. And because this ranch, and I, are stronger with you here." Her heart stuttered. His words carried more weight than any silver coin, more than all the respect she had been denied in Redstone. And in that moment, she knew the truth. This was no charity. This was trust. This was respect. And perhaps, if her heart dared to hope, it could one day be love. Seasons turned on the Hale ranch. Spring rains brought new grass, summer sun drove long days of labor, autumn painted the hills gold. Through it all, Eliza remained at the Baron's side, her presence becoming as steady and essential as the land itself. Their bond grew in the quiet moments, shared coffee at dawn before the ranch stirred to life, evenings spent by the fire reviewing accounts, a rare smile from the Baron when her laughter slipped free. The townsfolk continued to gossip, but even they could not deny what their eyes saw when the Baron rode into town with Eliza at his side, his respect for her plain in every gesture. And one crisp autumn evening, beneath the wide sky streaked with sunset, Baron Hale finally spoke the words that had been building since that day in the market. "Eliza Mae," he said, his voice low but steady, "this ranch no longer just needs you. I need you. Not as a worker, not as charity, but as my partner, my wife. Her breath caught, tears filling her eyes. All the years of scorn, all the loneliness, all the whispers, they fell away in an instant. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. "Yes, I'll be yours." And in that moment, the poor girl scorned by the world became the woman chosen by the wealthiest man in the county, not because of her poverty, not despite it, but because of the strength, grace, and love that poverty had carved into her soul. The Baron had been right all along. His ranch did need her. But more than that, his heart did.